so I think we'll go ahead and officially get started with our updated submission forms lunch and learn session. So welcome. My name is Cecilia, and
I'm Bailey.
and we are the Georgia Adoptive Stream state coordinators, and we're very excited to have you all here and share our updated data submission forms with you all. So as many of you know, over the past couple of years, we have been working to make a number of updates to the resources for our program. So some of the ones you may have noticed, we have made updates to our website, also to revamp some of our social media presence. And one of the biggest ones is our workshop presentations as well, which some of you all may have seen if you've attended a workshop in the past couple of months or attended one of our launches, our virtual launches that we had in the past few months as well. So again, we've just made a number of updates to our resources in the past couple of years. And we know that from your feedback that our data submission forms have needed some improvements for a little while. So that's something that we have been working on updating as well. And so this is kind of our first attempt at addressing some of the issues that we all encounter when we are entering data on our online database. So the edits to our data submission forms did go live last week, so a week ago today on February 28th. And so we have gotten some feedback from you all. I think, there's been a decent amount of positive feedback, but we've got a handful of folks that have encountered some issues with our with the data submission forms. So we have been working with our IT team to kind of iron out some of these issues that folks have been encountering. And so we're still kind of working out some of those kinks, and we really, really appreciate all of your feedback and your patience. And if you do ever encounter an issue on our database, we would really love to hear about what's happening. So feel free to email us. Bailey just posted our email in the chat. So feel free to reach out to us with a bunch of details on what you encountered. Preferably if you could include some screenshots. So that'll help us pass that information onto our IT team and try and get that resolved as efficiently and quickly as possible. So again, we really appreciate all of your feedback and patience as we are getting our data forms all set up. So we will have some time for Q&A at the end, but if you do have some questions while we're going through, feel free to put those in the chat and we can circle back to those once we have finished going through the demo. But yeah, again, we ask that you please hold all of your questions until we are done. So without further ado, I will go ahead and pass it over to Bailey and she will dive into the database and show off some of the updates.
All right, thanks, Cecilia. I'll just echo what Cecilia has already said. We're very much looking forward to sharing these updates with you all. Of course, we're still working out some kinks, but we are excited and we'll be glad to answer any questions at the end, but hopefully we'll be able to address a lot of those going in now. So are y'all seeing?
Yes,
what are y'all? You're seeing this screen over here with the data form. Okay, great. I don't see the little screen around it, but that's fine. We are there. So we are ready to go. So y'all see the data form that we now have that's live on our website. You can see that there have been a number of cosmetic changes on this form. We've had some color changes, some more concise language on the form, a little bit of spacing and formatting changes that have happened, but all capabilities of the form are the same. But we're going to go through some of the added and new capabilities throughout the form today. So we'll kind of start here right at the top. We can see that a lot of the colors and a lot of the text that were here in kind of the old form, it's old only by a week, but we took out that text and really just wanted to focus on what's most important. And the first is going to be that this asterisk will indicate required fields. So moving into kind of going and inputting data on this form, we just want to be aware of these required fields because if you don't have those, you will not be able to submit the form. And we'll go into kind of what these errors and warnings look like a little bit later after we kind of talk through these parts of the form. But we're going to start here with our site information, because this is probably one of the most important fields on the form. We have to have that site information for all of the data that you're inputting in to be tied to. So we want to make sure that we have the correct and appropriate site information first. So we're going to go ahead and type that in. And of course, we're going to be kind of working off of some creative data that Cecilia and I may have collected, yesterday or today. We'll just kind of work through that. But again, any specific questions we can address at the end. All right, so when you're actually selecting your site, you can type in to this field here, either the site name or the site number. So we're going to be working off of this test site here today so that we can kind of, submit all this data without it interfering with anyone's actual site pages. So what we want to do and make sure that we are doing here is typing in that field name or that site name and selecting from that drop-down list. So I'll just do that one more time, but make sure you select from the drop-down the site that you're trying to select. And then once you do that, the appropriate group name should appear below. So once you have those two steps, okay, good to go. The form has accepted my group and it's corresponded, or accepted my site, and corresponded with my group. So I'm good to go and move on to the rest of the form. I know a lot of this will probably be a little repetitive for folks who fill out the data form on a regular basis, but just want to go through and talk through these things. So we'll say that Cecilia and I monitored on Friday at 11:47 a.m. There were two of us and we spent 30 minutes sampling. So these are the required fields in this top section. The rest of this is, of course, just optional information that you can add. But now we move down to our participant section, we can see that we have another required field to fill out. So Adopt a Stream monitors is referring to folks that are actually certified with the Adopt a Stream program to monitor streams. So that's going to be Cecilia and me. All right. So again, I selected from the drop-down list after I typed in these names. Oops, sorry, Cecilia, spelled your name wrong. But it's right there at the bottom. So I'm selecting from the list. We can see how it populates into this gray box here. And we know, okay, good to go. These have been accepted, so I can move on. Other participants may be folks who are not certified with our program. So maybe friends and family, maybe it's students that you're going out into the field with, things like that. These folks are not certified, so you can add names in here and just separate those with commas. But you can add as many as you like, and then their names are associated with this data collection. All right, moving along. Next, we've got our weather conditions. We want to make sure we're noting those, as those can impact some of our observations and our results that we're getting. So just choose what you're seeing out in the field. And then if you're unsure about rain, you can always use this link here. It takes you to a site where you can input the most accurate location information and kind of manipulate and see how much precipitation you've had in your area within the last number of however many hours or days that you select. All right, so now moving down to observations, we want to draw your attention to kind of these top three really quick before we move on to the rest. So this first one here is flow and water level. This is something that only freshwater volunteers are going to fill out. So streams, rivers, lakes, things like that. Because if you're in a coastal area, water level and flow aren't really as relevant as tide. We want to make sure that tide's taking precedence for our coastal folks. So coastal folks, you can skip this, but all of our freshwater people are going to fill out this flow and water level. So Cecilia and I monitored a freshwater stream, so we're going to fill out this one. We're going to completely skip tides because we are not in a tidally influenced area. All right, and then water conditions, you'll notice here, it also says coastal and lake monitors. So coastal folks, lake folks, if you're seeing any of these things, whitecaps, waves, what are your water conditions looking like? You make that note here. But again, that's not what Cecilia and I monitored, so we'll just skip right over those and move down to water clarity as our next parameter or observation. So we will select here our water clarity, our water color, water surface, water odor. I'll note that these circle buttons, they're called radio buttons, just means you can only select one of the options in that field, whereas these check boxes, these little squares, you can select multiple. So just be aware of that, that you've selected the most appropriate answers for the observations that you've collected in the field. All right, now a really exciting part that we're happy to share. We finally have a place to upload photos. So we've always encouraged volunteers to take photos of your site, maybe photos of your group while you're monitoring, especially photos of potential issues that you're encountering at the stream. Photos can be great and really helpful in helping you and your local coordinators identify those issues. But we didn't have a place to store those until now. So excited to share this capability with you. Um, this photo upload is pretty simple and easy. We have some instructions here at the top, but we are going to walk through all the steps of this adding photos here. And note that this bottom checkbox is going to be automatically checked for you. Just lets us know that you are willingly uploading these photos to the database. They're relevant to your site information, and that we have permission as Adopt a Stream to use them for outreach and educational purposes. And you'd be surprised how often we do. It's really great to have volunteer photos. We really appreciate you guys sharing those with us. All right, so we're going to actually go through and add a photo here. So we've already selected this kind of plus button, and this is going to pop up this field right here for us to fill in the appropriate information. So I'm going to use some photos that I took at my stream on Saturday so we can kind of see what that looks like. I'm going to click browse here, and I'm going to select the photo that I want to click. You can double click it, or you can click open after you select it, whatever works best for you. We can see now that we have this green circle here that the photo has uploaded to this part of the form, but we still have to fill out our image name and our image description. So I'm going to do that really quick by actually just going to copy and paste since I already have this ready to go. This is a photo taken at my site from a bridge looking down on the site. So it's from upstream. I kind of wrote that in the image name, and then I have a bit more descriptive language there in the description. All right. So now I'm good to go, and I'm ready to actually upload this to the form on my site kind of observations. When I'm ready to do that, I press this check button right here. And it does a weird thing where it kind of pops you to the middle of the page, but don't worry, when you scroll back down, there it is, and it's uploaded to your form. So if you wanted to add another photo from here, you just press the plus button again, and then you can add another one. Let's see, I'm going to add, whoops, my algae photo. So I can press open here. So I can see, got the green circle, I'm ready to go, but maybe I accidentally selected the wrong photo. You can hit remove here. That's going to take your photo away, and you can go back in and select the correct one. If you hit this X button right here, it's actually going to delete everything that's in this kind of box right here. So if you have image name, description, anything in this image right here, it's going to delete all of that if you press the X. So that's the difference between remove and X. But now we can go ahead and add our image name and our image description in our box right here. So I'm going to name this photo algae. It's a photo of some algae that I found in the stream. So I'm ready to upload. Check. All right, great. We're only going to do 2. You can upload up to 10. We do just ask that we keep those photos down to less than 4 megabytes each. If we get above that, photos that are large in size, it makes the form really slow to load. Again, we just want to make sure that everything uploads really smoothly and that we have enough room on that form to keep all that relevant information. So just make sure that you keep that in mind when you're trying to add photos. If you're encountering some issues, make sure that you kind of look at those directions and make sure that you're below that, that size that we're asking. All right, so we're almost done with our site information now. Moving down, we don't want to miss trash. Whoops, it's right here below. Photos kind of sneaky at the bottom. But I want to make sure we fill that out. So maybe at our site, Cecilia and I did pick up some trash, but we are interested in an organized cleanup because there was a lot more trash than we could actually pick up. So if we check that button, we would encourage you guys to look into Rivers Alive, which is our sisters program, we can share that email address in the chat. But if you have any questions about what an organized cleanup would look like, that's a great place to start. Rivers Alive actually provides all of the educational and outreach materials and actually cleanup materials too that you need to kind of help organize a cleanup. So that's a great place to start. All right, and then last thing on our form is our comments. These are really, really valuable in helping to actually interpret your data and understand your results. So I'm going to put some comments in there about the algae that we saw, and that pertains to our updates there. All right, great. So now, oh wait, I forgot. We have this now button here because like Simon told us just a few minutes ago, we don't have to press submit every time we finish a page now. We're actually just going to press submit one time. So what we're going to do after we finish filling out our site information, you can just scroll to the top where we have this little kind of tab right here that floats along with you on the page. It takes you back to the top of the form. It looks like it refreshes the page, but it actually doesn't. All the same information is there. You go back to the top. Again, we're not pressing submit yet until we input all of our data for this site. So we'll say that Cecilia and I also monitored for chemical information. Since we're freshwater, we're using a conductivity meter in lieu of salinity or water clarity. None of our reagents are expired, but again, you can contact us or maybe a local coordinator for information about that. All right, and I'm just going to input some information here of some results that we saw at our stream. Okay, all that's in, good to go. All right, so that's all the data that we actually collected on Friday when we were monitoring. So now we're going to say, all right, we are done. That's all the data we collected. I clicked submit all. It was thinking, and now this new page is loaded. And we can see this green text here lets us know chemical information has been saved, as well as our site information has saved. So that's all the info that we put in. So we are good to go inputting that information into the form. But we are going to show you guys now some of the potential errors and warnings that you could encounter while entering information on the database. So I'm going to use this handy dandy feature down here at the bottom and just say we're using the same site, date, participants, and weather. So if we click new form, it's going to populate all that information for us. This is just for ease so we can show you guys some of the things that we want to show you in the form, but please use that capability however you'd like. If you monitor more than one site, it can be really helpful. All right, but first we're going to talk about errors. So an error is something that if you are inputting data and you hit submit all, a pop-up box is going to come up at the top of the screen and say you actually can't submit data if you have errors in the form. And an error is when data is entered that's actually impossible or near impossible to achieve. So an example of that would be here in pH. So maybe we put 70 and 70 when maybe we actually meant to put 7.0 and 7.0. Maybe same goes for dissolved oxygen. We have, I'm going to try to put 9.0 and 9.4. But you can see maybe I left out the decimal, something like that. And when I try to hit submit, it's going to say your dissolved oxygen must be between 0 and 20. We have that range in there because, so this is actually supposed to be a 9.0. We have that range in there because even if dissolved oxygen is super saturated, so maybe some of you folks who do chemical monitoring on a regular basis have maybe encountered that or have heard of it, even if you have an environment like that, you're not going to achieve anything higher than a 20. If you do, let us know. Maybe that's something that out of our wheelhouse, or really that's just something that you're not going to encounter. And so we have those kind of parameters or stops in the database because that's not a possible result for dissolved oxygen. That's way above what we can actually achieve with the tests that we're conducting. And the same goes for pH. So I've corrected dissolved oxygen, so now maybe I think I'm good to go, but then another warning is going to pop up and say pH must be between 0 and 14. Again, we have that known range. Similar to DO, we have a known range of what's acceptable for pH, and that's 0 to 14. So I go back and look at the form, I see my mistake, I forgot the decimal. So now I'm ready and I can submit the form now and it's been saved. So that's an example of an error. You actually can't submit data with an error. That's different from what we're going to show you now, which is a warning, which can be encountered in a few different ways. Warning is something that's just going to let you know these data are outside of the QA/QC standards. They're outside of that QA/QC compliance, but you still can submit those data because they are possible results, right? So for example, that's going to be, if we're looking at the chemical form again, maybe we got 7.0 and then we say 7.5, but that's outside of our duplicate precision range for pH. Dissolved oxygen, maybe we got 9.0 and 9.9, that's outside of our duplicate precision. So that's not going to stop us from entering the data, but is going to be flagged as saying that this is outside of that range. So one more example before I show you the pop-up, that's going to be on the chemical form, the bacterial form. So we can kind of, freshen things up a bit, move to a different tab, is if we have a non-zero in this blank field. So even if you're not familiar with bacterial monitoring and the protocol, and we're not trying to get too nitty gritty there, but we can infer that on our blank, we want to be a 0. Blank's kind of our control. We want our blank to always be 0. However, it is possible due to contamination or maybe some other things that are in play that we have actual values that could be present in this field. So even though it's supposed to be 0, we're aiming for 0. Maybe this time we're monitoring, we actually had a value appear on that plate. So we have to input that here on the form. Oops, we're inputting the rest of this stuff here. We've got our date, time, all this good stuff. Everything else is within those QA/QC parameters. We're going to see now what it's going to look like if we're outside those QA/QC parameters here. So when I try to hit submit, we're going to see we got our chemical warnings come up to say, oh, your pH is outside of that duplicate precision range. Dissolved oxygen is outside of that duplicate precision range. And on the bacterial, you have a blank that's not a 0. So these are all warnings that can pop up. But you see, this is a very different message than what was on our errors pop-up, right? Here at the top, it says, click OK to submit data with warnings below. Results will be flagged. This just means flag to say you're outside of QA/QC, but we can still submit it. So if maybe you want to check your results, make sure, oh, I made a mistake in entering, you can hit cancel, go back, kind of check your work. Maybe you meant to put 9.6 here, something like that. But you can actually still hit submit with these warnings. So you can just press OK. And after the form's done thinking, there we go. We have this green text going to let us know this data has been submitted. Same for bacterial here in our site info. All right, so that's errors, that's warnings. And then we've got these couple other forms that we haven't actually touched on here yet. So we can go through and show you what that's going to look like. I'm just going to keep using this capability because it's pretty handy for showing you guys what we're trying to show. Okay, so these other two tabs here haven't really changed at all from what was on the database previous to this. You're just going to see that consistency in colors and fonts, spacing, and all that good stuff. So the way you fill this out hasn't changed at all. Just using, if you're inputting macroinvertebrate data, the stream, oh goodness, my mouse, the stream typed, methods used, habitat sampled, all that good stuff's going to go in. And then when you're filling out your taxa groups, make sure you're aware and you're using the abundance codes to enter that data. So be aware that you're trying to get some kind of approximate counts when you're out in the field collecting data. You're inputting all this stuff in, and this result is actually going to be calculated for you. So you can see that value is changing as we keep putting in results here. All right. And then stream habitat survey, again, hasn't changed at all. It looks pretty much exactly like our paper data form. There really aren't too many deviations from that at all. So it should be relatively easy to fill out. Just copy right over from your paper data form, and you can add your numerical values in here, your scores, your ratings for each parameter. We can see if we scroll to the bottom that that's already calculating the score for you. So no need to do that. Just make sure you're copying everything over correctly. And yep, so that's the the macroinvertebrate and the stream habitat survey. So you can see, all right, I didn't finish filling this form out, but I'm going to go ahead and maybe get started on adding some of my chemical data that I collected. But now I actually have to run. I have a meeting, or I have to pick up my friend from, I don't know, you have to run, right? You can't finish inputting your data. So now we have this handy button, save as a draft. So for those of y'all that entered data prior to, I guess, Friday of last week, we've made a couple adjustments to the form. The save as draft button is this gray button right here at the top of the screen beside submit all. We can hit save as a draft because I couldn't finish entering my data. So what's happened now, saved as a draft was successfully saved, but we can see this form's not completed, right? But I actually just got an email, which I can pull up and show you. Here it is. There it comes. Okay. So when you submit a form, or a data form as a draft, you're going to get an email directly to your inbox, whatever email that's associated with your AdoptStream profile. And it's going to say, thanks for saving this form associated with this site. You can view your form here. This is an important link. We're going to talk about that. So it says, since you've selected save as draft, the data that you've inputted into the form that's incomplete, right? It's not going to be submitted or live or show on your site page, anything like that, until you actually go back in, complete that draft, and officially hit the submit button. So right now that data is just kind of living in the leeway right there. So you're going to come back in and click this link to actually edit and submit that data. So you can find that link here. This draft is going to be saved for 7 days. We're going to keep that kind of a tight window so that we're entering our data quickly. And we don't kind of lose this link, right? We want to make sure we're doing it within 7 days, and you can access it via this URL here. You will get reminder emails to say your draft is going to expire in a day or two. Don't forget to enter your data, and it'll send you this link again. So just click on that, and it's going to take you directly to the form, the draft that you started on. So when you're ready, you can hit complete draft. It'll open up that form back for you to go in, finish entering your data here. Well, not 70, right? We already talked about that. And you can go ahead and add this info in and say, all right, now all of my data is complete. I can hit submit all. Now this data is officially on your site page. It's published on the database and you're good to go. And we can see that here, your information has saved successfully in the green. Okay. Awesome. So that's one of our new features too, is that save as a draft button. The last thing we want to show you is where those photos live. So we talked about how we add photos to our site information now. So I'll just show you guys what it looks like on my kind of site page. So this is my site page. This is me and my husband. We monitor a site here in Roswell. We have 3 recorded monitoring events. So you can click here to kind of open that page up. This is the monitoring event we actually did this Saturday. So if we open up this form, it's going to take us directly to the data that I entered. All right. And here's all the photos that I actually added to that form. So if we want to see these a little bit bigger, you can just right click and open this image in a new tab. So this is that algae photo that I was telling you about earlier that I uploaded. We got some algae in the stream. We encourage folks to take upstream and downstream photos, so I added those. But really whatever you think is relevant, and those again are saved with the actual day, time, and site that they're associated with. All right, so I think now we've pretty much encompassed the new parts and new capabilities of the form. So we want to open it up to you all for questions, concerns, comments, anything like that. We would love to be able to address any of those for you today in the lunch hour.
And you can feel free to unmute or turn your video on if you like, or you can just go ahead and put your questions in the chat. Thanks, Bailey, for going through all those data form different options. Definitely powered through that.
Hey, I was gonna ask if this site is mobile friendly. I've had a few people ask me about that.
It is not currently, no. We still have to use those paper data forms when we go out to monitor and then upload them on the desktop when you get home. But that's something that we definitely have in our minds for the future, but that's not, we don't have that capability at the moment.
Cool.
Thanks, John. Are there any other questions?
I have a question. In the past, when I've added in the chemical form additional tests that I've monitored, and then I go back at a later time to look at that data, I can't see the additional tests. They somehow disappeared. Have you had that problem before?
I don't think that we've had anybody report that as a problem, but we can definitely make a note of that and
well, I'll just try your new form and see if it changes. Yeah. I just wondered.
Yeah, thank absolutely. You. And if you do have those issues, feel free, like we mentioned, to reach out to us and give us, shoot us an email with all the description of the issue that you're having and screenshots and whatever, so that we can send that over to our IT team and get them to clear it up for us.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, are there any additional questions? Definitely hang out for a little bit longer as well. I know we powered through, like I said. Bailey had that down pat.
Oh man, I know, maybe I went too fast.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
I've noticed a lot of volunteers, when I get the email, don't fill out the weather data. Has there been any thought, first of all, how important is that to you guys? And then second of all, has there been any thought to making that a required field?
Interesting. I don't know. Harold can speak to this if you'd like. But right now, all of our observations are optional. They're not a required field, but we do really, hone in on the workshops, as you know, John, make sure you're taking those observations and the weather data and all that good stuff. But if they're not actually submitting that, then yeah, that's probably something we want to address. But maybe that's more of following up to them to say, hey, this is some information that's actually valuable. It does correspond with the information you see. If it's cloudy, that's going to affect how you see, maybe like looking down into the water to take your other observations, or not as much sunlight coming through, maybe explaining those things in their importance. But right now they're not required, but we could change that.
What was that exactly? The weather or the warm? What did you say?
Well, I've just noticed when I look at, I get the emails and I look at some of the data that people aren't always putting in the weather or the like the precipitation data. When was the last time it rained? I might have said weather, and I'm actually talking about the when the last time it rained information. And I was just wondering how important that is to y'all's usage of the data. And then I asked if y'all had thought about making that a required field, if it was important enough to do that. Bailey, we are talking about doing like some kind of updates to our volunteers in Gwinnett here with a couple pointers, and that was going to be one of them that I was going to bring up. So, but I don't know how y'all use the rain information, or if you use it when you look at the data.
So we use it when something goes awry. If there's some weird data point out there, some weird bacterial level or dissolved oxygen is strange or something like that, then that's when like the weather information becomes really important. And that's when I go straight to the comments section. And I really try to encourage our volunteers to put comments in there, even if they think it's, it may not mean anything. They see something unusual or something like that. Put it in the comments, because you don't know when somebody else, because when I see something that's strange, data that's strange, dissolved oxygen pH or bacteria, first thing I do is I pull up the form and I look at the weather information and I look at the comments section to see if that can help me interpret what's going on. And oftentimes it can if they put something in there. So even if it just seems like, yeah, like I said, something different that they're observing out there, that's helpful.
That's good. That's something we'll stress a little bit on a local level here.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks, John, so much. Looks like we got another question in the chat, which I believe is from Mary, asking what would be the essential photos to include. I mean, we do recommend taking photos upstream and downstream, which can help you kind of look at changes at your site over time. But like Bailey mentioned, she had some algae in her stream. So including any photos that are, of maybe some anomalies that you're seeing or just some interesting things that you're seeing at your stream, again, kind of ties into those observations like what we were just sort of talking about, just helping us understand our data a little bit better. So essential photos, I guess the upstream and downstream, but whatever you're interested in taking photos of and uploading. And if you want to include pictures of your group out at your stream, just having a good time, that's also great. We would love to have anything that you'd like to upload. We got a few, oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Is the comment section the best place for us to note, like say, somebody's dredging the lake or something like that? That's just the best place to flag that for you guys? Or is there something else we need to include? Just the comments is kind of the catch-all area for that? Okay.
Yeah, I would say so. And again, Harold, if you want to jump in on that, but I think that that's probably the best place to put information about that. And again, now that we have photos, if you want to include pictures of any sort of impacts on your site, that can be very helpful. But those comments are really, going to be very, give a lot of insight as to what's happening. So yes, dredging activities, any impacts. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if there was any place special to just kind of note, hey, this is wildly out of the normal, or just the comments was the kind of catch-all area. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just follow up with what Cecilia said. So when you put something in the comments section and the volunteer enters the data, so that event is shared with all the other coordinators in that area within that county or that watershed. So anything in the comments area will go into the email that's shared with that coordinator. So if you're in Cobb County, then the Cobb County trainer, should see those comments. And if it looks unusual to them, then they should be able to, or they might act on it or follow up on it or something like that. That's a passive route about something that you see that seems strange. Beyond that, then you can take it, you can actively email us or the local coordinator or email the district offices for EPD.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, because dredging the lake's not necessarily an emergency situation, but if you run across something that was an emergency situation, is there a preferred, contact? Like if you saw raw sewage spilling in somewhere, or, is there ever a situation like that? I'm fairly new to this, so this is probably something we've covered before, but I haven't actually gotten to the monitoring part, because unfortunately I broke my foot a few months ago and I can't get out into the water yet.
Yeah, I mean, so the EPD district office would be a good first choice. You know, but before that would be the county or city government, that they're the issuing authority. And they're the ones that can usually resolve something like that. And then beyond that would be the EPD district office.
Okay, which that all makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can just quickly show what Harold was talking about too. So when you submit your data, this email will likely come to your inbox. Am I showing the right page? You're seeing my email? Okay, great. Sorry. So this email will come to your inbox, but all local coordinators who are tied to your area and to your site will also receive this email. So you can see like photos don't come up, your actual data results don't come up. They have to go in and click that, but what does come up is the comments that you put here. So my comments about the algae, like that's going to show directly on the email. The rest of the stuff down here is about like Rivers Alive because we clicked that button about the trash, but it's really helpful, like Harold's saying, is kind of a starter. The first thing is just putting those comments in, because it immediately draws folks' attention to that. So it can be a helpful way.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks Kathleen for chiming in. Do we have any other questions? All right, well, great. We appreciate y'all joining with us today to go through these new forms. If you do have any additional questions, again, please feel free to just email that adoptive stream or aas@dnr.ga.gov, which is in the chat. You can find it on our website. We're very happy to help with any issues that you may be encountering. We did have a few little kind of glitches or maybe tweaks here and there that we made this past week. So if you encountered any of those, just try again and let us know if you have any other issues. But we appreciate your patience and your feedback throughout these processes. So yeah, just let us know if there's anything that you're encountering. And I think that's all for today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And like Bailey said, feel free to reach out to us.
Wonderful.
And hopefully see you at Confluence.
Yes.
Yeah. All righty. Well, yes.
Thanks, Bailey. Thanks, Cecilia.
Hi,
You're very
Simon.
welcome.
Thank
Bye.
you.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and hop off. But yep, thank you so much for joining us today.